Friends, welcome to the 360 Experience podcast and my conversation with Barry Habib. I'm your host, Tim Braheem. Barry is not someone who needs an introduction to this audience. He is a legend in the mortgage industry and is easily the most significant teacher this industry has ever had. And over the course of the last 7 months, he has been on a journey, a life journey that transcends all topics associated with business. Yes, at the top, we will talk a little bit about mortgages, the economy, and the direction of interest rates. But this conversation will take a turn to a much more important subject matter, life. I've been waiting for a few months now to have this conversation with him, waiting for him to go through his chemotherapy treatment and to feel strong enough, because I knew that he would have something beautiful to share with all of you. He has been brave. He has been focused. His mental strength and emotional strength has been incredible to me. I've stayed in close communication with him during this entire journey, and I've been at times dumbfounded as to how he could be so mentally strong. What he has learned about life and about how to control the mind is noteworthy. You're going to learn a lot today. This will be an emotional episode. It certainly was for both of us, and I'm sure it will be for many of you. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy this episode of the 360 Experience and my conversation with my friend Barry Habib. Hey, brother. How are you, man?
It's really good to see you, Tim. It's really good to see you.
It is great to be here with you. I will do my very best to not be emotional in this episode, but I can't promise anything. For me, this is a blessing to spend time with you, to connect with you, to learn from you. There's a lot to talk about. I'm honored to have you on. You're such an amazing teacher. My intuition is very strong. It has been for a few months now that we're going to see a new iteration of the legend that is Barry Habib as a result of all that you've been through on this intense journey that you've been on this year. And I'm just grateful to be here with you. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you with all that you have going on for making the time for not just me, but of course for everybody who's watching and listening. This is going to really be a gift.
Oh, well, Tim, it's a privilege to be with you. Anytime that you and I get to chat, not only is it always fun, but we always manage to come up with some good ideas that can help people. It's always meaningful. And I just want to thank you for long-time friendship, but during this time, you sure have been incredible. I know you've been incredibly busy. You've been traveling, but you always manage to check on me every day and see how I'm doing. You're just an incredible human being. So God bless you and thank you. It means the world to me. Thank you.
You're so welcome. It has been a gift to me to be your friend, and to on a daily, literally every morning basis, to send love your way and to think of you and to reach out and to connect with you. I'm just grateful for the opportunity. So listen, I know that we have a lot of beautiful things to talk about today. I want to first start with business because we're in a really great time right now, I think. I mean, we just did a call for MBS Highway, you and Danny and I, a little more than a week ago. You really excited the hell out of those 2,200 people on that call with your forecast. So we're recording this at the very end of August of 2024. We're surely going to see some things happen here, I would think, in the next 30, 60, 90 days. Let's just go 50,000 feet and give everybody an overview of, what you see coming in the market, so people can be prepared for it.
So, Yogi Berra said that predictions are tough, especially about the future, and it's a very humbling experience, Tim. I think we've done a really good job on the real estate market where we were pretty much on an island and everyone else was forecasting doom and gloom, and our forecasts have been right on the money for a long time. And on a daily basis, I think we do a really good job with rates, but we missed it in 2023. And so when we talk about rates, again, it's a humbling experience to try and forecast it. But in the beginning of 2023, we thought rates would come down in the middle of 2023. And the reason for that was because we thought inflation would decline significantly. I actually made a pretty bold prediction and said CPI would be at 3% in June. And wouldn't you know it? Holy cow. In June, CPI was 3%, just like absolutely crazy, right? And we thought that starting May, we'd start to see the reduction in interest rates. It was heading our way. It was really good. The 10-year Treasury got down to 3.25%. But then we were proven wrong because a few things happened. So it's important to study what went wrong so we can learn from things, right? All of us, we make mistakes, and I'm no exception. I make my share of mistakes too. And we want to make sure we get it right more often than not. And the way to do that, I think, is to learn from your mistakes. So what we did not see coming was two things. One, I think we kind of got blindsided by was the debt deal that took place. And it put $2 trillion of additional debt that had to be financed. And the way it was financed with a flood of treasuries that came on the market, and Fitch downgraded our credit rating. When did that happen? June 3rd. I mean, right when we thought rates were going to come down. And rates did a U-turn and started moving higher. So that was one. The other is we were, as you probably recall quite well, getting pummeled on a monthly basis because we felt that the job picture was not as strong as it was. Guess what, Tim? We were right. But the monthly numbers that were coming out from the BLS were exaggerating those job reports by approximately 100,000 jobs a month. Now, clearly, the market and the Fed would have had a different tone if job creations were 100,000 per month less than what they were. Well, guess what we just found out 3 weeks ago? I'm sorry, a month ago, a couple of weeks ago, forgive me, that 818,000 overall jobs that they claimed initially were created weren't. And this is after the BLS already did their 300 plus thousand job reductions from what they originally reported. Now, that's overall jobs. When you look at the private sector, which is the lifeblood of our economy, it was well over 1 million jobs that were overstated. That's just unfortunate. We're in the United States. We're not in some third world country. We need to have better data than this. And that's the ironic thing, because as we, from this 50,000 foot view, the question you asked me is, where are we heading? So the Fed is now poised to cut rates as we record this. And probably by the time people will be listening to this, we will have had our first rate cut. And the question is not now whether the Fed will cut rates. And we'll talk in a minute about what does that mean for mortgage rates and real estate, because they're all hand in hand. You could say, okay, what's the real estate market going to do? Well, tell me what mortgage rates are going to do. Well, what are mortgage rates going to do? Tell me what the 10-year Treasury is going to do and what the spread's going to be. And for that, we're going to look at what's the Fed going to do. So these are all, and what's the Fed going to do? What's the job report going to be on the 6th of September? So we know we're going to get 25 basis points, and 50 basis points really would not be out of line. In fact, 40% of all Fed moves, a significant number, have been greater than 25 basis points. So it's not like it's that uncommon. The last 6 Fed rate cutting cycles began with a 50 basis point cut. So again, it would not be abnormal. This is a Fed that is less experienced in economics. Jerome Powell is not an economist. He's a lawyer. One of the loudest voices on the Fed, which is Michelle Bowman. Now, Michelle Bowman has no business experience. She's a lawyer. Her only business experience is working at mommy and daddy's bank, yet she is the most vocal Fed member. They got to remember, there's 19 Fed members. Of the 19 Fed members, you have governors, and those governors vote every single month, or every single meeting, I should say. And then the Fed presidents, the New York Fed president, so 7 governors vote all the time. The 5 Fed presidents, the New York Fed president votes every time. The other 4 of the 11 rotate in and out. So Michelle Bowman has a big say because she votes every time. And she has been doing more on like press conferences and more media than, I don't know, pick a name out there, than somebody who's out in the media all the time. So she's been trying to get a lot of exposure, and she keeps pounding the table on why the Fed should not cut rates and why she's worried about inflation. We did in one of our updates a full reason why she is over her skis and does not have the experience. And it's so sad, Tim, because the United States is the world's reserve currency. So it's the most important currency in the world. The price of money is the Fed funds rate. So the price, the most important price in the world, the price of money in the world's reserve currency is determined by 12 people out of 19, forgive me. Those 12 people who vote on it. It's incredible that they have that much power, but it's also mind-boggling the lack of understanding that they have. And that's why we have these boom bust cycles. That's why we have booms. That's why we have busts. They don't get it. They say they're data dependent, but that by definition, if you're waiting for data, the data's old. So that means you're looking in the rearview mirror. It's like driving a unbelievably high-powered performance car and you're not looking through the windshield. You're driving it looking through the rearview mirror. That's why you have crashes, by looking through the rearview mirror. That's what the Fed does by being data dependent. But what's worse is as we continue to learn, the data itself is extraordinarily unreliable. And a lot of this is created from the distortions from COVID, but also a lot of this data, it's terrible at inflection points because it's models, because it's past performance. When there is an inflection point, the data lags dramatically. And that's why we have these situations. Now, we can go deep on why inflation is overstated because of shelter. We can save that discussion. We can also go deep because there's something called the birth-death ratio, which measures the births of new businesses and the closure of businesses. It doesn't capture the closure of businesses due to the fact that, look, you can close a business, but keep it open for tax filing purposes for a year or so. But the doors have been closed. It's not doing any business. You're not bringing any revenue. And you've let the people go. So these are all why the numbers that we are getting from the BLS are less than reliable. So as we record this, a big question is where will the Fed be? And I think that there's at least a 50-50 chance, maybe greater, that we will have seen a 50 basis point cut. It's by no means a guarantee. And it's important to start here. So I did a comparison on one of our updates, and we showed, let's go back to 2019. We called it Hey 19, the song by Steely Dan, Hey 19. And so when we looked at Hey 19 and the data, aside from the fact that inflation is slightly higher as determined by the Fed's favorite measure, core personal consumption expenditures, or PCE, it is currently at 2.6. Now, in just 2 days, Tim, we'll get a number. It'll either be 2.6 or 2.5. It's gravitating towards lower numbers, shelter lags, and also the numbers that we had last year at this time were extremely low. So it's grudgingly moving lower, but it will get lower. But every other measurement is much worse now than it was then. The unemployment rate then was 3.8%. Now it's 4.3. It's not so much that it's just a 0.5%. It is, on a percentage basis, quite a different change. Some people will say, historically, that's still a low number. It's the change that always is what matters. If it's a high number and it moves up, it's a big change. It creates recessions and vice versa. Now, when we look at some other measurements, like, for example, a quite often used metric is job openings to those unemployed. Well, clearly, there's not a lot of matches. We are now at a level worse than where we were in 2019. But here's the other aspect of it, Tim, is that in 2019, as you are very well aware, we did not have work from anywhere being as prominent as it is today. After COVID, work from anywhere. I mean, anybody listening, look at your office. It's half of it's a ghost town, right? So, if you're even working in your office, if you're listening to this, you can relate to that. Why is that important? And nobody really digs deep into this. It's because the job openings, called the JOLTS report, job openings and labor turnover, where we get these metrics. So if you're saying, okay, well, job openings relative to those unemployed, it is now worse than where it was in 2019, but it's so overstated now because of this. The way that the numbers are aggregated is not on a national basis. It's aggregated by each state, and they roll up the numbers to a total number. Well, in 2019, it is possible that you may have posted multiple openings in different states. But today, it's commonplace, because if you're looking for someone who could work from anywhere, I'll post somewhere where employment ranks are either less expensive or more plentiful to fill the position. So I believe that the JOLTS report is perhaps very overstated. So I think that all these metrics are worse. Now, we bring that up as another building block, Tim, because if we know we're in much worse shape than we were back in 2019, then let's take a look at where the Fed funds rate was, 1.75. Today, it's 5.375. Now, by the way, remember we said that that's the most important price in the world. So I'm just going to give you some tough love here. If you didn't know that, then please think twice about your position as being a master of your craft. That's the most important price in the world. You're dealing in an interest rate sensitive environment. It's the building block for all interest rates. You really need to know this stuff. So you need to be on top of your game. I'm giving you tough love here because your competition, those who've survived, your competition's tougher. Business is going to come back in a big way. You want to have the biggest net you can. I want to explain why, Tim, that's so important because, and you know this, Tim, no one's better at being a master scripter than you. In those first 5 minutes or 10 minutes, when you talk to a customer, that's when you win the deal. Yes, rate is part of it. But if you sound like you're sharp as, as a tack and you are on top of your game and you understand this stuff, you have a much greater chance of winning. So it starts there. It was taught to me very early on that the easiest way to build your business, the easiest way, is take the leads you have and close more. Increase your conversion ratio, and that's the magic elixir to your bank account growing at a much more rapid pace. Because you don't have to do anything. You just have to be better. Okay, so understanding this. Sorry to have deviated, Tim.
That's okay.
But when we take a look at the Fed funds rate comparison, the Fed's much higher than it was. Let's take a look at the 10-year Treasury. The 10-year Treasury, of course, was lower than. And when we take a look at the 10-year Treasury today, 385 or so, compared to where we were, we're significantly higher in the 10-year Treasury. Mortgage rates were around 4% then. Let's call it 6.5% today. So I set the table for you to tell you there's an opportunity coming. How do we do the math and do the work? Because, Tim, you know me. Some people, you say, okay, where rates said, we don't do that here. So if we're wrong, we're going to be wrong for not because we pulled a number out of our ass and hoped that it was right and went, oh, here's what it's going to be. We do the work and we do the math. And I will take you right now behind the curtain. Now that you've gotten all the background, and with that background, I'm sorry to have taken long, but we have to set a foundation because without the foundation, I'm not going to just give you stuff that doesn't make sense. So now that we understand that, here's the math. Back in April of 2023, things were looking good for us. The 10-year Treasury got down to 3.25, and then we had those events occur, the job numbers that were incorrect and the debt deal. The Treasury Department has told us for the next several quarters they will not surprise us. So assuming they stay to their word, we won't get fooled again like the song goes, okay? So that we know error that we made is taken off the table. It looks to us that if the Fed starts cutting rates, and whether they start with 50 or 25 is less important than the continued cuts that we will receive at subsequent Fed meetings. They start bringing in the lower end of the curve now. The 10-year Treasury will follow suit. On a technical basis, and this, we do the charts and all that stuff, and you don't have to be a technician on charts. Put it this way, when you have 3.25 as a support level, there is a gravitational pull that you can get back down to that level. I believe we'll see that 60 basis point drop in the 10-year because I think the Fed's going to cut by the end of this year, early next year, at least 100 basis points, and then maybe another 100 or 125 basis points in 2025. So good things are ahead for you. You're going to refinance people multiple times. So you better be ready. Now, as that happens, the 10-year Treasury will not follow the Fed point for point. But if we see 100, 150 basis points from the Fed, it is very reasonable to assume 60 basis points in the 10-year, especially with inflation also coming down thanks to the shelter component coming down. Tim, shelter makes up a large portion of where inflation is coming from. So as that abates to a more normal level, for example, Tim, right now, real shelter inflation is 3%. Yet the way it's stated in CPI and PCE, currently it's looking at 5.2%. It should be 3, and it will get to 3, but because it lags. The way that CPI is done, it takes these panels and they do it every 6 months. I don't have to get into so much detail, but imagine you're looking back 6 months. And then when you look back 6 months, what if they sign their lease 8 months before that? So you can imagine the long lags that occur. It will come in our direction. It will take time. So we will see benefit from inflation. We'll see the benefit from the real key, which I'm about to get to, which is the jobs numbers, the unemployment rate. But as we see that occur, the 10-year Treasury to get to 3.25 is not pie in the sky. In fact, it likely can go lower than that. If we get there, now, what is the difference between a 3.25 10-year Treasury and a 30-year fixed rate mortgage? Tim, we have gone through the numbers on this. And for the better part of the last 30 years, the spread between the two is 1.6 to 2%. It's in that range. It has exceeded or gone below it from time to time, but the majority of the time, well, 80%, it's within that range. Since COVID, it went a little crazy. It went much higher, then much lower. But since then, it's gone up. Now, why has it gone up? Back in October, it was 3.1%. Remember, the normal range is 1.6 to 2. You had a 5% 10-year treasury and 8.1% mortgage rates. That's a 3.1% spread. Very, very high. Now it's shrunk to 2.7. Let's understand why first. We all know this part, I think, because when you look at your rate sheet, as price goes up, what does yield do? Yield goes down. As price goes down, yield goes up. We know that relationship, right? Part of the value of a mortgage, part of the price that gets added into the value or price is servicing. Now, what is servicing? You all heard of it. You all know what it is. When somebody makes their payment, they're not making the payment to the company holding the mortgage. Nobody holds a mortgage. Too risky because of interest rate risk. So all mortgages are sold, but someone still has to do the work, collect the payments, pay the taxes, pay the insurance, send you a nasty note asking your questions. That's called a servicer. The servicer gets compensated for that. So the servicer compensation is a fee that they receive every month. The longer that mortgage stays on the books, the more servicing income that they get. When is the servicing value established? At closing. So you got to guess. You got to say, well, we expect the servicing to last 80 months, 100 months, 40 months. How do you do that? It's not easy. But the first step is, what is the propensity for it to refinance? When rates are very low and expected to go higher, well, it's likely that that person won't refinance, or they might have the lock-in effect like they do now. So servicing value is a big part of it. So that adds to the value of the mortgage. When mortgage rates are at 8%, the servicing value is not there. Why? Because the chances of that 8% mortgage being refinanced in the very near term is quite high, because all you need is rates to drop to 7%, not much, 7.25%, and they're refinanced. In fact, a lot of those 8% loans are probably refinanced already. So what we understand is that the servicing value goes down. That value shrinks. When the value shrinks, the price shrinks. What happens to the rate? The rate goes up. And that's why the spread was 3.1% over the 10-year treasury. Now rates have come down a little bit. It means that the current 6.5% rate is less likely to pay off, to refinance fast compared to an 8% rate, but it's still higher than we've seen normally. So the spread's 2.7, but it's improved. As rates come down further, because the 10-year treasury comes down, mortgage rates get down to maybe around, let's call it 6%, because the 10-year treasury has moved down 0.5% or 60 basis points. Remember, 10-year treasury, 385, it gets to 3.25, that's 60 basis points. Mortgage rates drop 50. We should see maybe another 20 basis points improvement in the spread. So instead of 270, I think 250 is realistic. Still much higher than the 1.6 to 2%, because there's some refinance risk there. But let's do the math. If the 10-year treasury is at 3.25 and the spread will now be 2.5, that's mortgage rates at 5.75. This is how you forecast rates. And based upon this, I want you all to think about, what does your business look like? There's nobody better than Tim to give you advice on this. At a 5.75% mortgage rate environment, and what are you doing today to capitalize on that when it comes, because you don't want to be scrambling when it hits and you don't know what the hell to do. So that's the keys there for you to think about constructing your business. Now, one important factor that you will have already been benefit of hearing, we don't have the benefit yet as we're recording, but you'll be listening to this after it comes out, is September 6th, is the jobs number. The ironic thing, the most ironic thing is this, is that everything hinges on this number, which we already know is extremely unreliable. But the key is to watch the unemployment rate. Why? Because even back as recent as June, and Tim, you know this, we've been saying for a year, we played the recording of what we recorded a year ago, saying the key to this, we named it the golden ticket. The golden ticket was a 4.2% unemployment rate, when nobody was talking about that. And the reason why we said that is because the Fed members told us that what would take the Fed to move, even if inflation were higher, is a surprise in the labor market. Now it's all the rage. The labor market's all the rage, right? But we were early on it. Why? Because we look at this stuff. What did the Fed members say? 16 of 19 Fed members thought that the unemployment rate would be 4.1% or less. In fact, many of them thought 3.8, 3.9%. I don't know what they were smoking. But since it is now at 4.3%, above the 4.1, the Fed is worried that the economy and the labor market's deteriorating. So the focal point for you, or the focal point on the market on September 6th, is what did the unemployment rate come in at? Did that unemployment rate come in at 4.3 or above? It's a 50 basis point cut. Did that unemployment rate come in at 4.2, 4.1? You're still going to get a cut, but it'll probably be 25 basis points. So I know I'm putting my neck out on the line here, but that seems relatively logical to where we are. So I know it's a very long answer to the question, Tim, and I apologize for that, but I think it's important for us to understand.
Thank you for laying down that important foundation. So I want to quote our friend Craig Strent, and I want to comment on a couple of things you said. So Craig has often said that competence equals confidence. And this conversation that we're having right now is a conversation about competence. It's about you understanding the mechanics of your trade, how it works, the value, of course, the many values of MBS Highway and being tapped into Dan and Barry and the entire team is that they give you the competence that subsequently gives you the confidence in those first 5 to 10 minutes to have a meaningful dialogue that separates you from just some refi shop where the loan originator is on a salary and doesn't even know how this stuff works. So I want to really impress upon everyone the importance of educating yourself and understanding how to articulate what was just shared here by Barry. It would seem to me, based upon what you described and based upon the falsities and errors of the data, that our economy, as you've been saying for a long time, is not as strong as was once thought. And one would then surmise that what we have coming forward in the months ahead is information that is probably going to not be as impressive as maybe the Fed at one time thought. And they have this dual mandate that you've talked about that is associated both with the inflation and therefore the CPI reports and things of that nature. And the other part of their dual mandate is unemployment. And with that unemployment number being artificially low and incorrectly low, it would seem to me that 24, the remainder of 24, and as you said, most of 25 should result in a continual decline in interest rates. And again, as Barry imparted upon all of you, now is the time. It's actually now in my mind is even too late to be getting ready for it, but there's no better time than now. I mean, you need to be making phone calls to your clients right now and starting to establish strike rates with them and preparing them for what's coming and letting them know that you're on top of it. You're going to be the first one to let them know, and you need to know exactly who to call when the rates drop. And you cannot be scrambling. Speed will be the victor. And if you are not fast to the punch, you will lose to your servicers. So I want to pivot if we can.
But before we do, just a couple of quick comments there. I'll make them quick.
Yep.
So I love that speed. So we talk about speed kills, speed kills your competition. So that's an important one. But the unemployment rate currently, do you know what the unemployment rate is, or did you know before we said it? I'm just talking to you listening there. If you knew it, good for you. If you don't, it's telling you something. Again, you want to be a master of your craft. You need to know these numbers, because if rates are going to depend on that, then it's important that you understand that and you know that. So competency, again, confidence, love that. Craig is a top producer and great teacher for many reasons, but this is really important. Think about in a competitive environment where people are calling different loan originators, the first loan originator. Well, what's the market look like? Where are rates? Say, well, boy, if I knew the answer to that question, I'll be having a pina colada on the beach somewhere. But then the second person they call, you, is going to explain to them, while you may not know exactly where rates are going to go, certainly nobody does. Here's what we're looking for. We're looking for that unemployment rate of 4.3 this Friday with the PCE number. Here's what we're expecting to happen. This is why it's shelter. And this is what the Fed's going to do. This is what the spread's doing. So we anticipate some good news ahead. But then, of course, if they think that rates are going to come down and they think about waiting, what you can explain is that waiting, yes, you could get a lower rate, but if it's looking to purchase a home, the purchase of a home, if rates drop, you will pay more for the home. You can always refinance later. So the idea is to use the higher rate as your best friend and buy prior to the market changing. So those things. And by the way, the dual mandate for everybody, it is two things: price stability, and the Fed calls that 2% on core PCE, core strips off food and energy. This is a made up number. This is not something that was etched in stone. In fact, from 1996, Janet Yellen pressed Alan Greenspan into it. He did not want to answer. He even said, if I was forced to come up with a number, I'd say 2%. And he then said these very wise words. He was a very wise man. Janet Yellen, not a very wise woman. Alan Greenspan said, I would hate to think about what would happen if that got out of this room. And you could see the havoc that it has wreaked. The other side of it is maximum employment. And that's up for debate what maximum employment is. But that's why it is the change. It's the trajectory from where it was. So these are important things. Just want to make sure I've made those points, Tim. Thank you.
No, thank you. That's important. And I'll just add one last statement, which is, I can go back to the days when Mortgage Market Guide, bringing back some old stuff here now, existed, and I was an originator, and how much I would leverage the languaging and incorporate it into my scripting. And I you're kind enough to comment about my ability to script. My ability to script actually comes quite easy for me because all I do is just speak what I know. But if you're not constantly evolving what you know, then your scripting never changes. Okay. And that's why having, your CMA, being a subscriber and a member of MBS Highway, almost said Mortgage Market Guide there. Man, I'm showing how old I am.
Both there.
Trying to get into Mortgage Originator magazine.
Right.
For those of you that are old enough to remember all of these things, it's so incredibly important, for you to continually be tapped into, new languaging, which evolves your scripting, new wisdom and knowledge, which evolves your scripting and your presentation skills, which is what you do for a living. You present. I mean, that is the art form of this business. So we're going to take a hard pivot now for the remainder of this conversation. And I have a lot of questions for you. I don't know that we'll get through all of them. I'm going to ask you to be vulnerable, which I know you're capable of. So let's go back to when you went to the doctor and you found out that you had cancer for the second time. Tell me a little bit about what went through your mind, what went through your body, what feelings and emotions came up for you. Let's start there.
Okay, well, so back in 2012, I was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's follicular lymphoma in the duodenum area, and that was one that you don't do anything for. You just monitor it, and if it gets aggressive, you can treat it. And non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, it's not curable, but you can kind of manage it and live with it. And even if it were to become aggressive, it could be treated with something called rituximab, and rituximab is not terribly difficult to go through. Okay. So it's a monoclonal antibody. It does lower your immune system, does have some side effects, but it's not terrible. So, if you were to have a cancer, that was like, okay. So we would monitor it every so often. Now, back in December of 2023, in January, I was strong. I was feeling great. I was pretty asymptomatic with everything, but I was having a little sensitivity with my stomach, and it was persistent. And I called my gastro, Dr. Sincor. She's an angel, and we become very close friends. And she really watches over me. And she was the one that first diagnosed the cancer. And she says, Barry says, let's go do a stool sample. I was like, doctor, I really need this. Yeah, just do it. Okay. So I do that, and then I remember getting the text. As I was leaving my office in New Jersey to go travel. And she says, well, something came back a little suspicious, some insufficiency, pancreatic insufficiency. She says, I really want you to get a CAT scan. Now, in the process of doing that, I was booked for 2 weeks later to go to Puerto Rico, to go to Costa Rica. And remember, Tim, I was talking to you about, I was going to go to Costa Rica, Tony Robbins and I are good friends. And he says, Barry, you got to go to this RMI clinic. And I was going to do some stem cell work and some plasmapheresis, which, by the way, plasmapheresis is really, really important to do. So I was all booked, and I'd been booked months. And she says, go before. I said, okay, I'll go for a CAT scan. So Valentine's Day, I go for a CAT scan. And, 2 nights before, Rose and I were out at a concert. I was feeling great. So I was strong, working out, I was pretty fit, so I was pretty shocked when I got the results of the CAT scan, it just hit me like a ton of bricks that they found a mass that was big, 5 inches by 4 inches in my, it's called the mesentery root. Let's call it your abdomen area. And that was a shock. That was really, really hard. And now get this, I had booked that afternoon, a few hours later, for 3,000 people to do a webinar. You want to talk about sucking it up and trying to be a professional. I did the webinar and it was good, but it took every ounce of courage for me to compartmentalize the diagnosis I had just received and to do a good job on the webinar for those 3,000 people who were counting on me. I then went for subsequent PET CT. Now, PET CT measures, so cancer is uncontrolled growth and division of cells. And the way that a PET CT, positron emissions tomography, CT is computerized tomography. So CAT scan is computerized tomography, CT. What that measures is it measures your standard uptake value. That is how much glucose is being used in a specific area. Normal cells are about 1.5. I was 16.1, which is a high grade cancer. So we knew it was something different. We knew it was something new. And I knew I was in trouble. Then I had to go for a surgery for a biopsy. I had to have 4 surgeries in 30 days. The biopsy surgery was one where they discovered the pathology of it, and it is a double hit B-cell lymphoma is what I have. And that the survival rate's less than a year if it's untreated. And it is pesky. The treatment doesn't always result in what they call remission. And even after remission, it can come back. The chances of that are not insignificant. So then I had to go for bone marrow. Unfortunately, there was not bone marrow, so that was another surgery. Then I had to have surgery to get this port put in. And believe it or not, I had already had a eye surgery plan. So it was like, I had 4 surgeries in 30 days. It's crazy. And I worked the whole way through, right? So the treatment for this is called DA-EPOCH-R. DA stands for dose adjusted, and EPOCH-R, EPOCH is etoposide, prednisone, it's vincristine, and then you have doxorubicin and Cytoxin. So it's 6 drugs, and rituximab. So it's those 6 drugs. What has to happen with that is that it is 6 cycles of it, 3 weeks apart. And it's, for this type of cancer, 5 days of constant infusion. So at first, the Cleveland Clinic told me, well, you got to be in the hospital for those 5 days. Well, you don't have to be a mathematician and say, okay, 6 rounds, 5 days, that's 30 days in the hospital. I was panicking. I found a way to do it outpatient, where you have this, bag wrapped around. You might have seen, Tim, when I had that bag on the updates, and so I still work through the whole thing. It's heavy, it's big, and you sleep with the thing. It makes noise. Taking showers, which I have to do every night, is like gymnastics to kind of not get it wet, and this and that. It was not easy. And of course, then the week afterwards, you feel really awful. And Monday afterwards, they give you a shot of what's called Neupogen, which, because the toxins wipe out your immune system. And when that happens, you're very susceptible to stuff. So they try and get your white blood cell count back up. Well, this Neupogen, and the drug name is Udenica, what it does is it creates your bone marrow to work, but that's very painful. And the doctors don't tell you shit, even good doctors. I mean, they don't know. So, I was having pains in my chest that felt like a heart attack. And then my lower back was really bad. Now they'll tell you, take Claritin, take Tylenol, bullshit. That's like pissing in the wind. Nothing. But I found that ibuprofen, if you can tolerate ibuprofen, will manage this a lot better. So for a few days after, it doesn't hit you right away, but a few days later, you start to get these pains for a couple of days, and then it subsides, but it's very painful. And then you really start to feel the effects of the chemo. So, I'm not a complainer. And, I remember just sitting there, and my son, Dan, who was really good, would sit with me, and he'd say, Dad, he says, I could see you're struggling, because I wouldn't say anything. He says, describe it to me. And said, suffering would be the best description. And, we kind of laughed about it, but it's hard.
So
Sorry.
that's okay. Let me take, I have a lot of questions from just what you described. So I'd like to just jump in here real quick. So first question is, when you found out, were you afraid?
Terrified. Terrified, cried, just like really prayed a lot, cried, was terrified. Anxiety was really high. I was able to, there's something you can get on Amazon. It's GABA L-theanine for anxiety. That helped me get through because the anxiety was really, really hard to sleep. I was very, very, very nervous. I was afraid for my life, number one, still, and then all of the things that, for me to have purpose, I want to make sure I can continue to do things. And so,
can we talk about that real quick? So one of the things that you don't realize this, because I haven't shared this with you yet, but I'll share it with you now, is you've been, like such an amazing teacher to me in the last 8 months or 7 months since, you told me about this pretty much when it happened. So I've known about it since the beginning. And when I say that you've been an amazing teacher to me, I've marveled on a consistent basis daily I've talked to my wife a lot about it. I'm like, I don't know how he's doing this. Like, how did he compartmentalize and do that call with 3,000 people on it when he was in fear? How did he stay focused? How did he muster up the effort to continue to work? So I'd like for you to share a little bit about what your mental process was, because it is not lost on me that you had to have been in massive fear, but yet you have a very strong mind. That's very clear to me. I don't need to ask you. I know you do, just from what I've seen you go through. People go through shit in their life. We all do. I go through scary moments. Everybody listening goes through scary moments, but it's how we manage that and how we corral the fear-based mind that I think really matters. And I'd like to know how you did that.
Well, wasn't always successful, Tim. It's a battle. The first thing, and this is the way I've started every day for a really long time in my life, is I've started every single morning with gratitude, and I literally say out loud all the things that I am grateful for every day, and that's the way I start my day. And I actually, I thank God. I'm very spiritual, and say, wow, this is a dream life. Even through all that, I say, wow, I'm actually living a dream life. I have all of these wonderful, amazing things. And what that has always in the past helped me get through is the moments that, you get pissed off at something and it just, okay, you're human, get pissed off for 90 seconds. But then I was able to reflect on everything I talk about every morning to myself and say, okay, does this really matter? And what it allowed me to do was get into a better mental state. And first of all, I don't want to be pissed off. None of us want to be pissed off. We want to be in a beautiful place. We want to be in a good state of mind because as we all know, we have limited time. And boy, do I realize that limited time, how precious it is that you want to live it in a good state. And what living in a beautiful state does is it also allows you to bring joy to others. And look, for selfishly, bringing joy to others is what gives you fulfillment in life. So many people, we need monetary goals. We need achievement goals. We need that. But so many people hit those and we discover that they're not happy. Happiness is, elusive. But I think that part of what makes us happy is fulfillment. Those are the best times. When you buy a new car, that feeling is ephemeral. It dissipates, and you hit a goal. It's great and you feel good, but on to the next thing. But the joy you're able to bring to others and make a difference in their life or do something great and see that joy, that lasts. And I think that in order to do that, is we need to be in a beautiful place ourselves. Look, nobody wants to be around us if we're pissed off, right? So we're not exactly a pleasure to be around. But if we're in a beautiful place, think about how magnetic we are. And think about how great that is for your business. People want to be around you. People feel good energy, feel that good vibe. It permeates. It's so good and it makes us happy. So I've always done that. And as I've gone through this process, well, I tried to find areas to be grateful. I was grateful that I didn't have to be in the hospital for 30 days. So I had this terrible bag, but I would say so many times, thank God I have this bag. I know how terrible it is, but God, thank you. You've allowed me to have this and I could sleep in my own bed.
Yeah, I know. I know how hard that bag was for you. You know, um, we would text about it, and you would just be so grateful when that Friday would come, even though you knew that Monday was going to be really hard because the week after was hard, but you were just happy to be rid of the bag. And yet at the same time, what I'm hearing that is so beautiful is you took that thing that was like an anchor that you were carrying around, and you were grateful for it.
Yes, I was. And I'm sorry, but every day I would just be grateful for all the beautiful things that I'd have. And the decision that I made was that life is so short, and this period of time that I would be receiving chemo, I didn't want to look at it as an X on my life. I wanted to enjoy my life during that time. And so we would go out to dinners, Rose and I would take the bag, I would drive with it. I'd go out to dinner with it. People thought it was, they would look at me with it. But we would be out and about. Even when I wasn't feeling great, I would try my best to push myself. And I would try my best every day to take the days that I had, even though I was going through it, and enjoy them. And I wanted to work every day. And Tim, I want to kind of talk to you just for a minute. I know you have other questions. I just want to kind of talk to you just for a minute about what it was like for me when I was about to start chemo.
Yeah, please.
And when I was about to start chemo, I was terrified because I would, am I going to be able to work? Am I going to be able to speak? I was told by two separate doctors, the doctor in New Jersey that was able to give me the outpatient, great oncologist at the Cleveland Clinic. No, you're not going to be able to do speaking. You really shouldn't be traveling. You really shouldn't be like even going out much. And, I was like, whoa, I mean, you really shouldn't be working. And even when I go to the center, I would tell people like, okay, try and get me out of here because every day you have to go back to refill the thing. And they give us some meds. I would be like, okay, can you, they say, no, you shouldn't be working. Nobody here that's at the center works, that's going through this. So I was really terrified of that, Tim. I was going to start chemo April 8th. I'm at the dinner table with my son, Jared, and his girlfriend, Hannah, on April 6th. And like I said, my kids know that I'm not a complainer, and I've been through a lot, as everybody has. And, they know their dad's pretty durable. And I think they could tell I was nervous about this. And I'm not ashamed to say I was absolutely terrified going into chemo because I had no idea what to expect, and nobody tells you. So Hannah, Jared's girlfriend, works at an animal hospital. And one of the veterinarians there, Dr. Ben, she goes, Dr. Ben just finished, everybody's chemo is different, but there was also 6 rounds. He went for R-CHOP, which is a lot of the same drugs. It's different administration of it. It's not as intense, but she said, I bet you he could kind of talk to you about it. We get him on the phone. The guy is smart. He's articulate because he's an animal physician. So he's an intelligent man, and he's also a good guy. Took a half an hour with me and told me what I could expect. And the fact that, he was able to work, and he said it was tough and this and that, but I got off the phone with him, Tim, and it gave me the courage and it gave me strength, and I felt so much better. And I went into that, and it was like, okay, I can do this. And I was like, why isn't this out there? So as you know, Tim, I've been chronicling every day as to giving people tips on what to do so that if somebody unfortunately is faced with this, I'm putting it together in a library so they can see all of the things that they can expect, but also tips along the way. The important thing, and it really helped me, Tim, is that the education. And I say this not just for cancer, yes, for cancer, for illness, right? But please, education is so important in everything. You need to be the guiding light for your customers. You need to be educated on the market. You need to be educated on everything. And the way I just consume stuff is I just need to be highly educated. I could talk to people about this as if I were, most people, when I tell them this, and I've gotten other opinions. So when I give them the summary, they say, oh, are you a physician? No, I'm not a physician. They say, wow, they've never spoke to anybody who knows their shit. Like I know so many physicians have told me about this. It's critically important. And I will tell you why. So one small example was that I understand that there are ways, and there's a company, Sage Medic in California and in the Bay Area. So when I was getting the surgery for the laparoscopic surgery to get a biopsy sample, I had them take an extra one and send it to this lab. Why? What does this lab do? They test the efficacy of all of these drugs against my specific tumor. Now, I knew rituximab would work because I have something called the CD20 marker in my tumor. So once I knew I had the CD20 marker, I knew rituximab was the right drug. And we knew doxorubicin was effective. We knew prednisone was effective. We knew that Cytoxan was effective. But we also found out that etoposide and vincristine were not very effective against my tumor. So I would be putting these toxins in my body without much result. Now, etoposide's the one that wipes out your hair. Okay, great, right? So doctors are very hesitant, even though I showed them the data and did it, they're very hesitant to deviate from what they call standard of care. It could open them up for lawsuits. So I took all those drugs. After 2 rounds, you do a CAT scan, and we found that there was a robust response in the tumor. After 4 rounds, we did a PET scan, and that SUV dropped from 16.1 to 2.81. The size went from something like this to a sphere about 1.5 inches. So still there. But after 4 rounds, I did it 6 days after the 4th round. The effects of the chemo last for about 3 or 4 weeks. So it didn't contemplate the entire benefit of round 4. Then I had rounds 5 and round 6. But after round 4, and after round 3, I started to experience something that people who have chemo often experience, and that is CIPN, chemo-induced peripheral neuropathy, loss of sensation in like your fingers and your toes. Now, I started to get that, and I didn't want it to get worse. By researching this, vincristine causes this peripheral neuropathy. Vincristine is not effective against my tumor. So I had to have discussions with my doc and convince him to stop vincristine for rounds 5 and 6. He agreed. But if I didn't do that, if I didn't take the education, I would have had much worse neuropathy that may not be reversible. Now, it's not that bad. My toes are a little bit worse, but it's not that bad. I still feel it, but I got to squeeze a little bit. It's gotten a little better, and it can be better. And also I researched too, and I found out that in July, there was a new paper in JAMA that shows that these power plates, these vibrating plates, they can bring back the sensation and help. I got to wait till this is out to do it. But this is what we have to do. You can't rely on doctors. I would speak to everyone there. And I get very passionate about this, Tim, because every patient there, they have no freaking clue the drugs that are going into their body. They can't name it. They can't spell it. They can't tell you the side effects. They can't tell you the benefits or anything. And I am shocked at the lack of knowledge. And this is life. So don't think that people have knowledge when it comes to our profession, which is extremely important, the most important financial transaction they're making. We need knowledge. I went over my limit so many times with ChatGPT, but be careful. Everybody's saying, oh, AI. AI is fucking dumb, okay? You have to be the guide. I can't tell you how useful AI is. It's incredible, but it will also guide you down the wrong way because it doesn't know. People have witnessed me talk to AI, talk to the thing like, all the time for hours every day because I had to learn. And because my research, I would have to go back and say, wait a minute, but what about this? AI would come back. Oh no, you're correct. That's a good point. So don't take it as gospel. Use it as a tool. Trust but verify, as Ronald Reagan said. You need to be smarter than the AI, and you are smarter than the AI. But if you use it in conjunction with your intelligence and don't just take it as gospel, it is incredible. Powerful, and you will become so smart. So I suggest for everybody to be intelligent on whatever your adversity is. Master the adversity. If it's your competition, if it's others in your business, if it's trying to make more money, master it. If it's an illness, God forbid, master what that illness is. Know it better than your physicians, because nobody cares about your success. Nobody cares about your health more than you, and nobody ever will. So you have to take responsibility to be the smartest, to be the brightest, and to be the most well-researched in whatever you're trying to achieve or whatever you're trying to overcome. So sorry, Tim, I just wanted to go down that road for a minute.
We need to agree that you're going to stop apologizing to me. This is your platform, brother. That was really beautiful. I'm glad I asked that question. And I firsthand witnessed time and again. I mean, you were sending me AI models of the tumor. I remember I was on a flight one night and I'm getting text from you and I was just like sitting there going, this guy is just a machine. Like he is so educated on every nuance of this experience that he's going through. I want to comment on something you shared as it relates to why you started, you wanted so much to work. And I think it's very important that you were able to identify and that everybody understands the importance of the identification of purpose in life, because many people would have in this circumstance crawled into a hole and felt sorry for themselves. Excuse me while I clear my throat for a second.
Got it. There's another reason on purpose too, Tim, that's there, but I'll share that with you when you're done.
So there is a quote that I'd like to recite that is, I think, very meaningful and appropriate for this conversation. It's from Emerson, the great philosopher of the 19th century. He said, "The purpose of life is not to be happy. It is to be useful, to be honorable, to be compassionate, to have it make some difference that you have lived and that you have lived well." And I think that really is very identifiable with what you decided, was that I need to work so I have purpose, so I have will to fight and a reason to live. And I'm going to give myself all the education that I need so I can give myself my own light at the end of the tunnel. And if nobody gets anything from this conversation other than that wisdom from you, they have gotten an awful lot. You wanted to say you wanted to share something else about purpose. Go for it.
The other thing is that I wanted to be a good example for my kids. And you know how close I am with them. And, we work together with, Nicole used to work with me and, she's got 2 kids now, but with Dan and Jake and Jared who work with me. So I wanted to be a good example for them. When it came to overcoming adversity, because we're all going to face adversity in the future. And I wanted to show them that there are ways to overcome this. And there are things that we're going to go through, but we can go through it with gratitude and joy. And of course, with Rosa, I wanted to, she has been so great in helping me along the way, but I really tried desperately not to be a burden to her. I did not want her to go through this with me in a sad way. I wanted her to be happy. I wanted us to both be happy. Even though we were going through this, we laughed so much. And with my friends, with you every day, I didn't want it to be where you would talk to me and be dreading it because it would be sad. I wanted it to be happy between the two of us, where you and I could joke and we could have fun. And it was like that with everyone. I wanted it, and it wasn't fake. It wasn't like I was faking it. I just made the decision of what I wanted to do. So it wasn't like I was miserable and was showing a good face and, putting up a good stiff upper lip. It wasn't that. It was, I decided I wanted to be happy, and I decided I wanted to be happy with everyone. And I wanted to try and set an example. And I'd like to think that the wonderful, incredible family in our industry who have been so kind to me, Tim. I choke up every time with all of the love and the letters and the notes and the support. I can't even tell you how many times I've read through this stuff in bawling in tears, but they're all tears of joy and gratitude and appreciation. Because, Tim, it makes me feel like my life has had meaning, and I've actually done things that have helped people. And so I wanted to be a good example to them that they can look at and they could say, as we go through adversity in our life, that we can overcome it, and we can overcome it in a way that can be joyful.
You are an incredibly giving person. You're a generous person. You always have been. Even during all of this in our text exchanges, you're always saying to me, how are you? What can I do for you? And I'm sitting here like shaking my head, looking at my phone going like, what can you do for me, bro? Like, I mean, my God, I just feel helpless that I can't do anything more for you other than to just say hello, but there's nothing that you need to do for me. But what occurred to me one day when I read for probably the 50th time you asking me that question was that there must be some learning in this for you as it relates to you receiving from others. So what have you been taught through this experience about the importance of receiving as someone who is so accustomed to giving?
It's hard to receive sometimes, it's a little uncomfortable, but I've tried to learn to get better at it. I've tried to learn to just allow it to happen. And, I've learned that it doesn't always have to be a two-way street. It doesn't have to always be even. I'm sorry, forgive me. It doesn't have to always be even, but it should be a two-way street. So, people would do nice things. I'd always feel like obligated that I wanted to always give more than I received. But I had to tell myself sometimes it's okay. It's okay. It's okay to receive the love. And it's come from so many places that I have I've just been like immersed in it. And Tim, I've looked back. You look back at a photo, and certainly I look different. The other day, Tim, was so funny. We had an update, right? And we wanted to talk about how a year ago we made this forecast, right? It was really a dead-on forecast. We were proud of it, and we wanted to actually show the clip. And here I am, I think it was like 10 months before, and man, it came on, and it took my breath away. And then, Diana's crying, and it was like, here I am, hair and vibrant. My skin looked really good. It was like, wow. You could see what this does and how it changes you and your appearance. But it doesn't have to break your spirit. It doesn't have to. It doesn't have to break who you are. It can actually make you better.
Mm.
And that's what I've learned.
What I want to share with you as a friend, and I hope that you can receive this, is that you are worthy of receiving the love of others. And you don't have to do anything to earn that.
Thanks, brother. Thank you.
Yeah. You have a big day coming up here on September the 3rd, don't you?
I do. So there's PET-CT, which will now contemplate the full effect of those other 2 rounds and the remainder of round 4. So our prayer to God and our hope is that that SUV gets down to a normal level, and that we get into what's called full remission. I'm actually optimistic about that, Tim. And so hopeful that we get there. And we'll know the same day, I think. And from there, I'm already starting to think ahead, because that's just the way my brain works. And, what if it comes back, and what can I do to try and minimize those chances of it coming back? Because there's about a 40% recurrence rate. There's things you do like CAR T, which is tough, but it is a therapy. You don't do this chemo again. But there may be a way, depends, if there is still some residual tumor, which could be dead, called necrotic tissue, that necrotic tissue provides a target, even though it's dead. And you could use something called proton radiation therapy, where proton radiation, it enters but does not exit. It is targeted, but it has to have a target area to go to. So if there is a target area, we can use some radiation. It's not wonderful, but it's a walk in the park compared to the chemo. It's a commitment. It takes about 3 to 4 weeks, 5 days a week. And what that can do is that can assist in reducing the chances of recurrence, which is, that's, if we get to remission, my brain is okay. Next step, how do we minimize recurrence? So that's what we're going to try and do. But the main thing I'm going to try and do is I'm just going to try and if we get that good news, just live my life and be happy and bring joy to others, and just do the very best I can to value the importance of every single day that God gives me, and just pray for more days. That's all.
Must be so hard to stay present right now, knowing that that date is coming up, and to keep the fear-based mind from taking control and creating that anxiety. What I'm hearing you say is that you rely upon your faith, you rely upon gratitude, you rely upon purpose that you can bring into other people's lives. That is your medicine.
Yes.
More powerful than any drug you take. That's your medicine.
Yes. And, I'm not ashamed to say I'm very scared and very nervous, because you just don't know what to expect. But I also am very excited. I'm excited at the prospect of it being a good report. So I'm excited for that. I'm hopeful of that. And I'm counting on that. But I am afraid, because I've gone for these scans before. The PET scan and the CT scan that both happened in February were just really bad news. The pathology report was really bad news. So it was just a string of shitty fuck news that I was like, God, I need to end this string of just bad news. And then the first thing that was kind of good news was it wasn't in the bone marrow. So okay. So I had one little cling of good news there. So maybe this will change. And then some good news came when I found that I could do outpatient therapy, and like, okay, so we're getting to, we can turn the tide on this thing, and so I'm praying that we can continue with some good news, and the 2 scans subsequent showed robust response that is encouraging. So that's giving us hope that we could see good things happen.
We are praying for you.
Thank you, buddy.
So it's more than just your prayers. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Which leads me, I think, to my final question. Were there any unexpected sources of comfort and support that you were surprised by?
So many people that have just been unbelievable. Starts with Rosa and my family, who have just been so amazing and so supportive. That's just above and beyond what I could have ever imagined. And then the friendships, people like you, so many people that reached out on a regular basis. I'll give a shout out to Dale Vermillion. And Dale and I, we get on the phone. We always pray together at the end of the call, and so many people that are so busy. Tony Robbins, who is, guy's so freaking busy, yet he checks in on me and talks to me on a regular basis. And he provided me with some thoughts on, there's this machine that he told me I should get that gives you an electrical charge in the water and puts you in an alkaline state. And he's got me going. I'm going in October to this dentist in Dallas, that there's a correlation between root canal and cancer. And so he wants me to visit with him. So he is really taking a vested interest, and he is so incredibly busy. I mean, there's so many people, it's too many to count. And I don't want to go down the list of names because there are just so many. There's so many people who have been genuinely caring, supportive, concerned, and have been just a beacon of light for me that has made me feel surrounded by love. And it's a wonderful place to be when you feel surrounded by love. And it's also made me want to make sure that I tell people this, because it shouldn't be where something bad happens to them that they know it. They should know that all the time, because that never changed, right? The unfortunate circumstance that comes to people just makes you show it even more. But we should show it all the time, you know?
What just came to mind when I was hearing you say that is that in many ways, the cancer was your mirror that reflected to you all the beauty that you've given to so many people. And, my friend, I've known you for a long time. You have given so much to so many people. You've been such an amazing teacher. Yet, I think that it would be very unlikely that you've ever taught more beautifully than you did today.
Thank you, buddy. Thank you so much.
And I've told you this before, but I'll articulate it maybe a little bit more fully, is that I feel like you're being called forward into being a different teacher, a more powerful teacher than you ever were before. The perspective that you have on life and the beauty that you have to give has been multiplied through this. And I know that so many people are going to benefit from all that you've gone through. I know that I have. And I thank you for your courage, your bravery, how you've faced your fears, and the wisdom that you've gained. It's truly a gift to me, and I know to so many others.
Well, Tim, thank you. That's really what I want. I want to take this. I want to do good with it. I want to be able to make a difference that's positive. And brother, again, I want to thank you for the love and the friendship. I love you so much. I think you know that I think you're just so incredibly gifted and brilliant in what you do, and you're an incredible friend and so important in my life. I want to say I love you, and I thank you so much for just being so supportive, but just for being my friend. So thank you, Tim.
It is my honor, and I love you too. And I am very excited to see you in October in Las Vegas, where we will share a stage together for the first time in many, many, many years. And it will be a very long hug when I see you.
I'm really looking forward to it, brother. I really am. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, bro. And you know that I'll be thinking about you every day between now and September the 3rd.
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate that. It's going to be good, I hope.
Yes, it will. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Have a beautiful day.